seats. We are about to begin. Dear State Secretary in the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries of the Kingdom of Norway, dear Deputy Minister of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy of the Hellenic Republic, Your Excellency, Norwegian Ambassador to Greece and Cyprus, dear Secretary General of the Aegean and Island Policy of the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy of the Hellenic Republic, professors and members of academia, members of the Greek and Norwegian shipping communities, esteemed members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen, kalispera, good evening. It's good to be back in Posidonia. My name is Panagiotis Korakas. I am the Executive Director of the Isalosnet Initiative, and it is with great joy that I welcome you to this afternoon's event entitled Securing the Global Fleet, a Norway-Greece Dialogue. The event is co-organised by the Norwegian Maritime Authority, the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Athens and Isalosnet. Our conference is also organised under the scientific auspices of the Department of Shipping, Trade and Transport of the University of the Aegean, whose support we gratefully acknowledge. We are delighted to host this discussion during Posidonia 2026, bringing together representatives from various parts of the shipping industry and wishing to explore and discuss some of the most pressing challenges facing global shipping today. Norway and Greece, two of the world's leading maritime nations, share a long tradition of maritime excellence and a common commitment to safe, secure and sustainable shipping. Today's forum aims to strengthen this dialogue and promote the exchange of perspectives and best practices. We are honoured to begin today's programme with welcome remarks from distinguished representatives of the Norwegian and Greek governments. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Even Sagebakken, State Secretary in the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries of the Kingdom of Norway.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to the Quality Flag Forum, Securing the Global Fleet, a Norway-Greece Dialogue. And let me begin with a simple observation. There are very few countries in the world where shipping is not a sector at the edge of the economy, but one of its defining pillars. And Norway and Greece are two of them. That shared identity is not incidental to this forum, it is its very foundation. We gather here at a moment of genuine turbulence. The maritime world is navigating some of the most challenging geopolitical circumstances in recent history. Conflicts in the Middle East have raised security concerns across civilian shipping lanes and most urgently placed thousands of seafarers in situations of grave risk and uncertainty. We hope deeply for their safe passage, and let the concern for those at sea remain at the very heart of everything we discuss today. And we are also witnessing a growing pattern of sabotage, espionage, and cyber attacks in the maritime domain. A shadow fleet has grown in the wake of Russia's aggressions and international sanctions, operating outside the norms and standards that responsible flag states have spent decades building. And we see trade policies increasingly shaped by great power competition with direct consequences for open international shipping markets. Cybersecurity deserves particular attention in this context. As ships become more connected and operations more digitalized, the attack surface grows, and the consequence of a successful attacks are no longer limited to data loss, but extend to navigation, cargo integrity, and crew safety. And this is no longer a niche concern for IT departments. It is a core element of what it means to operate responsibility under a quality flag. And these are not distant policy concerns. They are challenges that affect vessels, crews, cargoes, and commercial decisions today for Norwegian and Greek operators alike. And Norway takes these threats seriously. We have called on all parties to respect freedom of navigation in accordance with international law. And we support the IMO Council declaration condemning attacks on merchant ships and the ongoing efforts to establish a framework for the safe evacuation of seafarers currently confined with the Gulf region. and we are actively participating in the working groups following up that initiative. But let me be direct about why Norway and Greece, in particular, have a stake in this conversation. Greece is one of the world's great shipping nations, commanding around 1/6 of global fleet capacity, and Norway remains a large ship-owning country. Both of our countries are among the world's largest flag states, with deep traditions in maritime safety, technology, and governance. Together, our two countries carry a large responsibility in how the global fleet is managed, flagged, and regulated. When we talk about quality flags, we are talking about a shared commitment that the standards that we maintain for safety, for seafarer welfare, for environmental compliance are not simply legal requirements. They are what distinguishes responsible shipping from the grey zones that undermine the entire system. And that is not a moral argument alone, it's a commercial one. Compliance is a competitive advantage, and the Norwegian experience has demonstrated through decades of building maritime capability from a high-cost economy that raising standards and building industrial strengths are not conflicting goals. They reinforce each other, and quality is not a constraint on competitiveness. For those willing to invest in it, quality is the strategy. Greek shipping knows this. Its global standing is built on commercial discipline and earned trust in international markets. The question before us is how that foundation is deepened and extended. As regulation tightens, as new fuel technologies reshape fleet economics, as geopolitical pressures test the resilience of global supply chains, and as hybrid threats demand more sophisticated responses. And this is where our dialogue becomes most important. Because Norway and Greece are not just comparable in their maritime weight, we are natural partners. We share a commitment to rule-based international shipping, to the IMO as the legitimate forum for global maritime governance, and to seafarers as key workers whose rights and welfare must be protected, including and especially in times of conflict. We also share a practical interest in ensuring that quality flags remain commercially meaningful, and that the space for responsible operators does not erode under pressure from those willing to cut corners on safety, labor standards, or environmental compliance. The conversations ahead today on maritime security, on regulatory frameworks, on the practical experience of our two industries are not theoretical exchanges. They are a part of an ongoing effort to strengthen the architecture that keeps global shipping stable, safe, and legitimate. I am genuinely encouraged by the engagement we see from both Norwegian and Greek maritime communities. At Posidonia this year, and in the work of this forum, we are building something practical and durable. And let me conclude with this. The sea connects us, it always has. Norway and Greece have built their identities, their economies, and their international standing through maritime engagement with the world. In a period of turbulence, that shared experience is not only a bond, it is a resource. Use this forum well, listen, challenge, and connect. And the partnership formed in these rooms like this are part of how our industry responds to a changing world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We also have the honor to have here with us today Mr. Stefanos Gikas, Deputy Minister of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy of the Hellenic Republic. Mr. Gikas, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation, dear State Secretary, Your Excellency, dear friends from the academic and maritime community, my dear friend Manolis, it's my General Secretary. Dear all, I'm very glad I'm here. I welcome you all to Posidonia 2026. As a matter of fact, we have a record 2,200 exhibitors, more than 83 countries participating in this event, and more than 40 to 45,000 registered visitors. So it's a record. Let me share with you some thoughts. For more than 60 years, actually, Posidonia has been firmly established as a landmark institution in global shipping, promoting dialogue, cooperation, and business opportunity across the maritime sector. In this context, I particularly welcome the strong presence of the Norwegian maritime community and look forward to further strengthening the excellent cooperation between our two countries in the shipping sector. The subject of today's conference is particularly timely, given that shipping is called upon to operate amid heightened geopolitical uncertainty, complex threats, and continuously evolving regulatory demands. For Greece, safety and security at sea are of fundamental priority. They are linked to the protection of human life, the safety of navigation, the protection of the marine environment, and the credibility of shipping as a critical pillar of international trade and global supply chains. In this context, we attach particular importance of cooperation with countries that possess a high level of expertise, a strong maritime administration, and a culture of quality. Norway is such a partner. The exchange of experience between Greece and Norway can be highly valuable both on matters of maritime safety and regulatory oversight, as well as in relation to technological transition, innovation, and sustainable maritime transport. We already enjoy active communication and a positive climate of cooperation with the Norwegian side. Evidence of our bilateral cooperation is reflected in important legal and institutional instruments, including the Convention on Commerce and Navigation, the Convention for the Avoidance of Double Taxation and the Prevention of Fiscal Evasion with respect to taxes on income and capital, as well as the agreement with the recognized Norwegian Classification Society, DNV, concerning the provision of services provided for under the existing legislation of ships flying the Greek flag to their companies. I would also like to underline our mutual support during the recent IMO Council elections, which reflects our shared commitment to close cooperation in addressing the challenges of international shipping and promoting the work of organization. As it is well known, Greece remains firmly committed to the green transition and the decarbonization process of shipping as a shared international objective. However, this transition must be pursued in a realistic, technologically neutral, and economical, sustainable way, ensuring that it does not lead to higher transport costs, additional inflationary pressures, or further burdens on citizens and households already facing the rising cost of living and the effects of the energy crisis. As probably heard yesterday, our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, he emphasized that this whole process of decarbonization and the green transition should be happen in a manner that didn't actually of the maritime competence of the maritime sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, in light of evolving geopolitical tensions and their impact on maritime transport and global supply chains, it is essential to remain vigilant and ready to take timely and decisive action at both national and international level, particularly in the framework of the IMO. Our objective must be to safeguard the uninterrupted functional of global supply chains, as well as the health, safety, and well-being of the seafarers. We are deeply concerned about the serious implication of recent developments in the Gulf regions and the disruption of maritime traffic in and around the Straits of Hormuz. At the same time, we are fully aware that security challenges are also emerging closer to your region, including the Baltic Sea, where incidents affecting critical maritime infrastructure and navigation safety have raised legitimate concerns. Guided by this approach, Greece welcomes the dialogue with Norway and looks forward to further strengthening cooperation in areas of common interest, both bilaterally and within the framework of the International Maritime Organization, IMO, where international cooperation remains essential to ensuring the safety, quality, and the resilience of global shipping. With these thoughts, I would like again to welcome you all in Greece, in Athens, in Posidonia, and I wish every success to today's conference, and thank you very much again for the invitation. Thank you.
Before we kick things off, I would like to invite Professor Serafim Kapros, Head of the Department of Shipping, Trade and Transport, University of the Aegean, as the event's scientific partner for a brief welcoming speech. Professor Kapros.
Your Excellency, dear ministers, dear Secretary Generals, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Kalispera. Thank you very much for the honor to address this opening speech to this, to my opinion, excellent initiative. Because it's the first time, at least during my 26 years of academic career, that we organize bilateral Greece-Norway or Norway-Greece event focused on shipping and more particularly focused on security in shipping. I had the curiosity, the intellectual curiosity, to see through certain articles, certain texts, why I feel that us, the Greeks, we have a lot of common threats with the Norwegian people, because they are very, very in the north, we are very, very in the south. I found the following, that from our first period of our existence, or of the knowledge of the history of the two countries or the two people, both we are very close to the sea, very close to maritime activities. The Greeks established some hundreds of colonies around the Mediterranean, but the ancestors of the nowadays Norwegian, they discovered Iceland, Greenland, some coastlines of the Northern America, etc. They didn't meet, but they had their own techniques in order to do that. They were living from the sea. And this is the first characteristics. They built cultures, not the same culture, parallel cultures, but cultures that are strongly related to the sea and to maritime activities. They are also both countries with a very extended coastline. I did my duty. Norway has the bigger coastline in Europe, 83,000 kilometers. Παρακαλώ, 83,000 kilometers. And Greece has the longer in the Mediterranean Sea, 13,600 kilometers of coastline. Finally, they are both insular countries. For Greece, you know well that there is a country with 6,000 islands, from whom around 200 are inhabited. Norway possesses more than 200,000 islands, but just 60 to 80 islands that are inhabited. So, insular countries, countries with extended coastline, countries whom the tradition and the cultures are very close to the sea and maritime activities. And nowadays, both countries are leaders in the shipping sector. Greece, we have said many, many times, is, in terms of capacity at least, for the time being, the first power in the world fleet, with around 23, 22, 23. You know, sometimes when we say 22, perhaps 2 new buildings are delivered and the percentage change. So let's say between 22 and 23% of the world fleet. Norway is at the 8th place. So both countries are the top 10 of the shipping powers. And Norway also has important part of the fleet in LNG and LPG, like Greece invested in the last years on that, and it is one of the bigger car carriers in Europe and worldwide. And Greece also is being increased this sub-segment of the shipping sector. They are also both leaders in important opportunities and challenges. They are also leaders in the green transition. Because in the practice, both sectors of both countries invest a lot in new buildings with using alternative fuels or hybrid, or I don't know, and this is revealed by the fact that, for example, the Greek-owned fleet is now, for the next months, waiting for more than 100 ships to be delivered by shipyards in the Aegean. And both sectors, or sectors of both countries, follow a diversification strategy in order to be on the safe side for any evolution regarding energy efficiency and energy supply. Finally, both sectors, or sectors of both countries, face with same problems like security problem. They are leaders in the green transition, in digitalization, in innovation, etc., and they face both same problems. Problems that derive from the disruption of supply chains due to the geopolitical events that we all know very well. Both countries have developed an ecosystem around their shipping sector, very dynamic, with industries of supplies, with institutions that support to one, in the one way or the other, the shipping sector. And in this ecosystem, of course, the universities are. Because these security problems that conduct sectors of different countries to think together and to find solutions together, finally they realized that the human element is the highest value in shipping. And the universities, of course, focus on the human element. They do not produce seafarers, but scientists that support the development and the further development and growth of the shipping sector. As far as our part of the ecosystem, the universities, there are 2, 3, add 4 secrets of success. The one is to try to be excellent. The second is to be internationalized. The third is for the program of studies to be interdisciplinary, because more and more the arsenal from various sciences are needed in order to understand shipping and to provide solutions to shipping. And finally, this is not mine, but I think it's worth saying. In universities, we are trained well in order to manage the changes, because the shipping sector is the continuous management of the change. And looking at our dear minister here, it will be the second time that I will finish like the following manner. I think that when, in all cases where the academia, the industry and the administration cooperate, things go better. If this can be done through a cooperation with 2 countries or 3 countries, they will be faster and better and better. And with these words, I would like to wish you a successful conference, and thank you for your attention.
And now I think it's time that we invite the members of our panel discussion to the stage, and I would also like to ask our photographer to take a family photo just before we begin. On that note, I would like to introduce you Ms. Lina Falkenberg-Olestad, Director and Head of Geopolitics for the Norwegian Shipowners Association, Mr. Manolis Koutulakis, Secretary General of the Aegean and Island Policy, Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy of the Hellenic Republic, Professor Maria Labru, Department of Shipping, Trade and Transport of the Business School of the University of the Aegean, Ms. Luisa Puccio, Senior Director of Shipping Policy and Communications for EXA, Mr. Svein Ringbakken, CEO of the Norwegian Shipowners Mutual War Risks Insurance Association, Ms. Cristina Sáenz de Santa Maria, Interim CEO for DNV Maritime, Mr. Alf Tore Sorheim, Director General of Shipping and Navigation for the Norwegian Maritime Authority, Mr. Nikos Tredefilakis, Managing Director of W Marine Inc., and Mr. Angelos Sirogalas, COO of Contships Management Inc. And of course, moderating this multi-level discussion, we have with us Mr. Dimitris Moniudis, who is the Chairman of the Technical Committee of Intercargo, and also, on another role, the Managing Director of Refimnis and Kouloukounis Limited. Mr. Moniudis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Panayoti. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much to Elias Bisias and the Isalos team for honoring me with moderating this great panel. Look forward to a lot of engagement. However, obviously, a lot of people have ate into our time. I just want to make a comment regarding Professor Serafim's welcoming notes. There is something, he alluded to it, but there is something that connects Greece and Norway even stronger. The ancient Norwegians, about 1,000 years ago, yes, they did reach apparently North America coast. However, 1,000 years earlier, as per historical records, the ancient Athenians during 1st AD did reach also Canadian coast. However, they arrived there in the summer. They were waiting for the sunshine. It didn't happen. The next day, they got back on the boat and came back to Mykonos to enjoy the summertime. So that, but we do have that connection. Also, I would comment that the title tonight was quality flags, but I would say even more so quality maritime clusters. Greece and Norway enjoy that, and it's obvious during Posidonia. So without any further ado, I'll just introduce very, very fast our panel today. We do have 4 Greeks, 3 Norwegians, a Spaniard and an Italian, so we balance it out somewhat. Obviously, we are very happy to have, I think we are gender neutral almost, which is very unusual in the maritime sector. I'm sure that you've noticed it also during walking around Posidonia, that unfortunately we're still a very masculine industry. So, but we're working on that. From the end, we've got Nikos Thanadafilakis, who's Managing Director at W Marine, Angelos Therogalas, COO at Conships. Help me. Yes, yes. With the Norwegian ship owners and
Norwegian Maritime Authority.
Norwegian Maritime Authority. Christina, who's interim CEO at DNV Maritime. Help me again, Sven. Yes, Sven Ringbacken, CEO at DNK, Norwegian Shipowners Mutual War Risks. Next to me is Lucia, and Senior Director, Shipping Policy and Communications. European Community Shipowners Association. Professor Maria Lambrou at the University of the Aegean. Back to here, Manoj Kutulags, SG of the Aegean and Island Policy, Ministry of Maritime Affairs. And last but not least, Lynn Ollestad, I know I should have numbered them, Head of Geopolitics, Norwegian Shipowners Association. So many apologies for that. Right, obviously we've got very little time. I'd appreciate if we can stick to about 2 minutes max of everybody's intervention. And I'm gonna start all off immediately with Christina. Obviously, we all know what's happened over the last year. We've got an increasingly fragmented and unpredictable geopolitical environment. What are currently the most significant maritime security threats facing the global fleet? As we discussed earlier, when we're talking about security, we're talking about physical security, we're talking about digital, cyber security, energy security, and of course, financial security. So there are a lot of things to dwell on. Christina, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think, well, you have mentioned it. I think what worries me the most is the complexity and the fact that that security / safety, it's going through several aspects. The aspect related to geopolitics, which is truly influencing the industry. We are seeing it obviously with the conflict right now in the Middle East and creating these choke points for the industry, and that's a threat for the vessels and for the crews. Another conflict obviously with the Ukraine, the shadow fleet was mentioned, and I think unfortunately it's a matter of time until an accident happens, and that's something that the industry, we need to tackle it. There's also safety risks related to as well the decarbonization shift and new buildings that have been ordered with new technologies, new fuels that are being delivered, and we need to handle them in a proper way. And there's the security and the safety aspect related to that digital transformation that the industry is starting to handle, and also the AI adoption. And there's a lot of opportunities, but unfortunately there's also a dark side, and that cybersecurity risk can truly affect both the operation of a vessel. Right now we have IT and OT more and more connected, and it can really jeopardize both the operations and the safety of our crew. and our vessels on board. So it's a very complex times, and unfortunately there's not a lot of time sometimes to take decisions. So, flexibility and I think transparency across stakeholders in the industry is key for us to move forward. But I do believe that the shipping industry is extremely resilient, pragmatic, and certainly these two, nations, Norway and Greece. So I think we have a good foundation to navigate these troublesome times.
Thanks, Christina, for the positive outlook. Sven, coming to you. Well, obviously, with your legal background and insurance background, do you think things are similar to the past, or we are just over-exaggerating, or should we be focusing a lot more on the risks nowadays?
I think what we're seeing today is nothing like we've seen in the past. Ever since the Second World War, it's been a rule-based order in the maritime, and basically ships could trade in relative peace. Of course, there were the tanker wars in the 80s. There were crises before. But what you're seeing now, and it's so easy to say that the big security issue is obviously right now, as we speak, the situation in the Gulf. But look, just before, long before actually, the war in Iran started, the maritime domain was on fire, and it was alluded to here. If you look at the picture from, let's say, 2019, when you had the attacks in Fujairah and in the Hormuz. You have 2022, the Houthis, Ukraine 2023, the Houthis, and the oceans have become the arena of a major power conflict. So basically, our industry is operating on the oceans, and the maritime industry has become a target. And that you can see in area after area, from the north in the Arctic to the South China Sea. And I think that is a very worrisome development. Keep that in mind, and not only focus on the situation right now in the Gulf. It's bad, it's really bad, but this is an ongoing trend, and unfortunately, it doesn't look good going forward with regard to that.
Thank you. Nico, I want to come to you. You're operating a fleet of ships. You have to remain commercially sustainable, obviously, focusing on the integrity of both the ships and the seafarers. How has the evolving security situation in the region, such as the Red Sea, obviously, and what's going on in the Aegean, affected your decision-making, voyage planning, insurance considerations, etc.?
Before we answer this, I would like to make a general comment. What we're going through right now is a very violent reshuffling of world power. Things are changing at a very dramatic pace. That's why you see wars, that's why you see major disruptions, and unfortunately these are not going to be at peace, they're going to get worse. So we have to get ready for that. We have climate change forcing changes, demographics, lack of commodities, lack of water. We're going to face a lot of many more disruptions. So it's the new norm. Vessels are weaponized, and we have to be ready to tackle that. As far as the running of companies is concerned, our company is concerned, our priority are the seafarers, of course, the well-being of our people on board, that our most precious asset. So what we try to do is try to keep them advanced of all the latest information. We talk to them, we communicate, we try to appease their fears, we listen to them, we try to accommodate the requirements, and we try to be flexible with our charterers and our end users to make sure that we avoid loopholes. It's something that you cannot, unfortunately, put down on paper. It's a very liquid situation. It changes practically from day to day, but this is our business. We're there to deliver safely, efficiently, reliably, and our task is to make sure we try to make the best possible solutions out of all the difficulties that we face. But remember this, we're going to be facing many more difficult and complex problems as we go forward.
Thanks. Agila, you're operating a fleet of... Thanks, go green flash. No, back. Agila, you're operating a fleet of container vessels. What would you like to add to how Nikos sees your operational challenges?
I think when it comes to shipping, the segment that we are operating in doesn't make any difference, because what we are facing at the moment is another example of what actually shipping has been born and be about, which is us being the risk carriers of transporting cargo. So the risk in the past was the weather, or was the ability of the receiver being able to pay for the cargo. Now we are facing a different risk, which is life at sea, when someone is bombing next to you, or is trying to go on board and abandon, take you off the vessel, as it used to be in areas of West or East Africa in the past. So we've seen this happening before. We are actually seeing this escalated. So when it comes to the normal riding the cycle of demand and supplies or geopolitical events happening in the past, which was always the excuse of any crisis that the shipping was facing, now this is there's another brick added into the wall. Shipping has the flexibility of riding this as long as we stick to the core values, as Nick said. Talking to the crew and have the utmost respect to our seafarers and be able to adjust on the commercial front, because at the end of the day, all this is adding to a cost, which the end user will probably face, not on a like with like or on an analog way, but it will end up there. And there is the legal steps and the commercial steps in between to make sure that this is distributed evenly. Until then, it's an effort for all of us on a day-to-day basis, not being static, and be very careful to adjust onto the new threat that is actually appearing next to us, wherever that is.
Thanks, Agile. Arturo, coming to you. We just heard about a deteriorating situation, heightened security risks. The ships are usually sailing way away from your office, from where the flag states are. It's the other side of the world. What can the flag states do to contribute to strengthening the resilience against all these emergency security risks?
Thank you very much. First of all, 80 to 90% of all goods are transported by ships. So if we don't do our job, the ship owners, the flag societies, the recognized organizations, shipping stops up, and then the society doesn't work as we're used to. So this is really important. And of course, the flag state is a part of this. The most important work that we as quality flag states must do is actually to do our job. Make sure that ships are in a good standard with surveys, make sure that they are certified, make sure that the seafarers are also qualified and certified, and make sure that safe ships sail. So that is our most important job, and we must be able to do this job in all stages of crisis. So that's number one. And I also think that being as a flag state, we have a responsibility of setting a security level in areas where there are conflicts or wars and so on. And having a good cooperation, making sure that we get necessary information to take the best actions based on this. So to cooperate with seafarer organizations, ship owners organizations, other countries is also important, so that we can bring necessary information out to the ship owners and to the seafarers, so that they can take the best possible decisions. And I think that maybe the third point that I would like to bring forward as a responsibility of a flag state would be to use our voice in the international community, in the IMO. So if there are lacks when it comes to guidance, regulations, and so on, we must use our voice. But as happened on the last MSC meeting, we must also, as nations, use our voice when we see that there is something wrong going on. So, and that's also important in the international work. So, and I also would like to just I noted what the professor said regarding the maritime cluster. That is really important. So in order to be a quality flag, in order to be successful, in order to be able to actually do our job, we must acknowledge that the maritime cluster is also a part of the flag. Thank you.
Thanks. Lynn, I'll come directly to you. Are the words of governments or the actions of governments or regulators, international fora, associations, good enough? Can they safeguard the freedom of navigation, maritime trade in the future? We all appreciate the importance. We know that we're carrying between 85%, 90% of the world good, but are we doing enough?
Thank you. That's a big question. Are we doing enough? I think, given the world that we're in right now, maybe not. I think right now we're seeing one big superpower and another one in conflict, keeping Strait closed, which is keeping many of our vessels and a lot of Greek vessels and other closed in. And we're in a situation where we're talking about paying tolls to sail through the Strait of Hormuz, something that our members oppose, and that we hope we don't get into a situation where we have to start doing that, because that fundamentally undermines the rules and regulations and international rules that our members depend on and the Greek shipping community depends on, and that we all need to safeguard in a much better way. And I think that's why we're very happy that we have our deputy minister here in Athens, and to have political meetings to strengthen the cooperation between Greece and Norway, because as we heard also from the professor, Norway and Greece have a lot in common. Two relatively small countries, Greece much bigger, but small countries, but with a huge shipping fleets in the world. And we depend on other countries in the world respecting our flag states and respecting the rules and regulations that we depend on so that our ships can actually operate around the world. So a lot still needs to be done, and we still need to uphold those international cooperation, because we're seeing that certain nations aren't respecting them the way that they should.
Thank you. But as we said, the deck of cards has been reshuffled, and relying on previous norms doesn't seem to be enough. Louisa, your comments, please.
Yes, thank you. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm one of the non-Greek, non-Norwegian today, but I represent the European ship owners. We represent 21 national association of ship owners in the EU, including Greece and, of course, Norway. So I hope that I can give you a little bit the European perspective on this. And of course, I fully agree with the words of Lina here when it comes to the principle of freedom of navigation. This is something that, as a community, we've been very, very vocal about, that we need to uphold and protect. But looking at the reshuffling of the deck of cards, I think one point that is sometimes missed at European level in this debate about the world and how the world is changing is that we see a lot of protectionism arising in the world. Of course, we've seen the US and other countries, and as Europe, we actually do rely on trade much more than some of our direct competitors, the US and China, etc. And that trade depends on competitive shipping. And by competitive shipping, we mean safe and secure shipping. So, of course, when it comes to our voice, our collective voice in Europe, it's not just about the high-level principle of freedom of navigation per se, but it's also how we bring forward the fact that trade. Free trade and smooth trade and secure trade is essential for the well-being of Europe. This is our belief, and I think, as it was said before, 90% of trade moves by sea.
Thank you. And I know I always ask difficult questions that definitely won't be answered here. Obviously, with my intercargo hat, we're representing about 5,000 bulk carriers worldwide, operated by roughly 220 members in 37 countries. So to be honest, our members are based all over the world, including Asia, including the superpowers, but all of the members seem to be facing the same concerns regarding security of their crew, security of their ships, insurance cover, etc., etc. So the whole world has to find a solution, but no pragmatic solution seems to have been developed so far. Sven, let's come to the actual insurance situation. We're talking about not only physical security, but even cyber security going forward. What is your idea regarding the insurance market? Can it cope with these kind of challenges?
Yes, it can. And I think the dark fleet, of course, is challenging the international P&I system and insurance system, but they will survive. The strength in that system underpinning the international regimes on civil liability and all of that, it's unthinkable without the insurance industry as we know it today. In the war risk insurance side, we were meeting electronic warfare and cyber by not only now competing with Hellenic and the Lloyd's market with the premiums like we all do and what we should do in the market, but we're also looking at the technological solutions to help the members maintain their positions when the GPS is jammed and spoof. There are good systems out there. We're installing them on the ship and them on the ships. I think also we've established a non-for-profit outfit called Norma Cyber, which is underpinning the ship owners' efforts to combat cyber attacks. And I think this is a great area of collaboration because you can only provide or get to the right level of protection if you share data, if you share and as many more join initiatives like this, we get a collective defense. So not only insurance, also technical things that we have to do to survive.
Thanks. I'd like to change tack slightly, Manoli, and come to you. We heard the minister earlier talking about alignment, common approaches with Norway, for example. The truth is, however, that, and I'm not talking about Norway-Greece, I'm talking about fragmentation amongst the international players on decarbonization, on green transition. That has appeared not only within the IMO, but even within the EU. How can the international and European maritime decarbonization regs be better aligned to reduce that kind of fragmentation and strengthen resilience and support competitiveness, especially in Europe?
Thank you for the switch, but actually it's part of the discussion because we are in Posidonia, we can discuss about the ocean-going shipping and all the things, but please let's all not forget what was mentioned yesterday by the Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, by the General Secretary of IMO and the European Commissioner Didier Kostas. So I don't need to repeat myself for many things. And of course, I just need to repeat and say once more about the close relations with Norway, but actually put a more place-based, if I may, approach to our common maritime values, because we share a specific geographical particularity that we are all safeguarding some gateways of maritime in very turbulent areas also. So safety and security, it's not just for our fleet, but also for our nations. So it's really important to keep in mind that our islands, our maritime domain internally is even critical also for our sovereignty. So let's not forget about these things because are highly related to the independence of our maritime fleet. And this is very important to share. And it's also one of the most closest relations that we can build apart from the history. And as you mentioned about the clustering, but we need safe regulations and simple regulations that apply to all at the same time. So I will make that bridge because it's very important. Of course, we are discussing about decarbonization, but as the Prime Minister always says, we need radicalism, but it's better with realism. So I think yesterday we have heard with the most official way on the way that we should move, because even if we share with Norway common values and our alliance in IMO, we have some issues to cope with within our European family. So we have to make sure that also the internal market and other issues in the European policy doesn't affect our global presence and value. So we need to be very aligned. So any successful decarbonization requires alignment of regulation, of course, infrastructure, investments and skills. And since we are under the auspices of the University of Aegean, allow me to say that the regulations, but also the policies should keep in mind that the human element is also very critical. And I can see a lot of space for interaction and cooperation between the two nations since we discuss about this kind of dialogues. So some important messages is that shipping is a global by nature. So as Greece, we believe that regulation should be as globally aligned as possible. So we need a stronger alignment between IMO. I think the two countries have shown that. The regulatory is essential for investment. We saw that any instability in regulations can create turbulence, but also, if I can speak for not the ocean going, but for the ferries, the short sea shipping, that is also a domain that we should discuss more, maybe, transferring knowledge, but also building joint cluster approaches, if I may also add, which is very, very important for both countries, but also that can work for transferring knowledge both ways and not one way. Infrastructure, of course, is something that must keep pace with regulation, especially for the ports. We have listened to the Commissioner DG Costas about the strategy for the ports and how it is related to the maritime industry strategy, and we have supported the close cooperation for that, which for us globally, but also on a European level, we need to reinvest any kind of decarbonization revenues into shipping. And we have to be very clear in that. Probably we have things to share and discuss with Norway maybe more in depth in that field, but this experience shows that we need a secure way for those revenues to come back to us. But allow me to say, and there is a lot of space also there for discussion, about how to support the SMEs, because it's not just the big, we're very proud of the big families and companies, but we have so many SMEs around the ecosystem in the heart of the ship owners also, but in a regional level, we have ferries and short shipping companies that should be supported in this big change that is coming. And of course, people that remain in the center of the transition, that means that we need a lot of investment also to catch up with the change, and probably this should be aligned. It's not just regulation, it's regulation for the people working for the ships, for the fleets, but also for the cluster around it.
Thank you, Manolia. And I really appreciate your intervention. I could have written half of it myself, to be honest. With my intercargo hat, 40% of our members do operate less than 10 bulkers, to be honest. We do have all the big players there. Our biggest member is COSCO, it's no secret, NYK, MOL, FedNav, Oldendorf, but more than 40% are smaller, they're SMEs, and they're looking for clarity before they make any future decisions on their investment policy. Now, you brought up many topics. I'm going to start off with the human element. Obviously, what's been going on at the moment is affecting foremost the people on board the ships. That is most important, the human element. And how are we going to keep focusing on that, making sure that we're engaged and protect them? Louisa, any comments from EXA side?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very, very difficult question. Of course, we've heard from previous speakers as well that when it comes to the current situation, for example, in the Strait of Hormuz, the safety of seafarers is the top priority. What we've seen in the last many years of crisis is really how different situations have constantly affected seafarers. Of course, we have, we had the situation with COVID, which really impacted our frontline workers. You see how, for example, the situation in the Red Sea, or like even the piracy situation before, we had some rules, some discussion at industry level on how to help seafarers seafarers through those things. If we look at the piracy situation, of course, we had the best management practices. Those have been constantly updated. And now we have a new situation. It's also the Red Sea and now Strait of Hormuz, where you can't really protect yourself, because before it was how do you protect yourself against a pirate attack, and now it's a ballistic missile. So on that side of things, the threat is constantly evolving, and it's really increasing when it comes to the seafarers. This is also for us at European level, we're having a lot of discussion about the survival of the sector per se, and how do we ensure that we keep actually a workforce. We are facing globally a lack of workforce in general in Europe as well, and the issue of the attractiveness of the profession is not helped by the current security risks. This is a very difficult thing to solve. I wanted to make a comment, actually. A few speakers before me have mentioned also the cybersecurity part. Maybe that's a bit more, something that we can address a bit more easily, although it's a very, very complicated issue. But one thing that I'm very happy about, also about this event, that brings together different stakeholders with the academia, is that when we are looking at digitalization and cybersecurity, this is something that we are working on. And we can continue to work on. We have, I see some familiar faces in the crowd. We have launched a couple of years ago ourselves, the European Ship Owners Association and the European Transport Workers Federation, the unions in Brussels, together with the European training centers. We launched an initiative, which is the European Maritime Skills Forum. And this basically looks at how we can exchange best practices between the seafarers representatives, the employers, and the training centers on a number of topics where we see that there are gaps. We have a work stream on green skills, one on leadership skills, and one on digital skills. And this is, when it comes to the digital skills, also with the seafarers unions, cybersecurity is one of our top priorities. Because we've seen, as mentioned before, that cybersecurity has moved from a threat to the companies to a threat to the assets. And when you threaten the assets, you also threaten the life of the people that work on it. So this is something that we are heavily investing in. And I'm very happy to see some of our partners around. I think in terms of when it comes to the risks, I think we can still work very effectively, at least on some of the challenges with the cluster that we have around us.
Thank you. And Maria, obviously, I will reach out to you now regarding the issue of cybersecurity that was just brought up. And what action do you think that government should be taking in order to protect the ship-owning community? Because at the end of the day, ship owners are not going to be forming their own regulations, and training cannot be just ad hoc identified by specific companies. We need a more regulated and standardized framework.
Okay, thank you. Yes, governments have different roles and different capacities. So governments act as flag states, act as regulators that have to amend, transpose regulations, and act as ecosystem members. That's their primary relevant roles in coordinating or promoting cybersecurity policies and postures. Actually, is the preferred term in terms of cybersecurity. Before that, I think we need to emphasize and realize that in terms of regulations, regulatory frameworks, we do have enough already. It's my understanding that maritime-specific frameworks and EU-specific or coming from EU frameworks that have to be transposed in different governments do constitute a very solid basis in order to support the maritime community towards a resilient posture. And I go back to the much discussed NIS 2 directive and the EUA Act. These are very thorough cyber risk management oriented frameworks that governments need to bring into their regimes and help support the shipping companies and shipping clusters to further adopt, implement, and so on. These are very, very, very powerful tools and instruments at the disposal of governments in order to support their shipping communities. As flag states, there is a huge differences. So a very big difference in Norway, in Greece, different doctrines about what is a preferred maritime strategy and how this interacts with digital strategy and what digital sovereignty might be for its government. This is a very complex landscape. The policies of different governments vary a lot, but the operational standards, the common orientation to what a cyber-secure, resilient posture is already converging, it's my understanding. Not only in EU, worldwide. It's not leading by example in Norway or leading by example in Greece. The operational basis, standards, specific standards, ISO standards 27001, the latest 42,000 for AI, and so on and so forth. These are the operational basis, and this is not a government thing. It's a shipping owning, shipping cluster, attitude, mindset, posture. So a number of interrelated aspects for that.
Thank you. Christina, you act on behalf of the flag states. CLAS will be supporting and auditing the ships. Maria is quite comfortable in the security of the framework, the regulatory framework. Usually owners complain that the regulations are always behind the curve because of the constantly developing tech, etc. What is your view, since you're actually going to be implementing these policies?
Yeah, no, I think the regulatory frameworks needs to be more robust, and especially from the cybersecurity aspect, that's never-ending, evolving in the sense of as connectivity and interoperability and integrated systems continue to evolve and obviously give us many good opportunities for the industry, but that means that the threats will continue to evolve as well. So it's going to be a challenge for the regulatory framework to keep up, and I think that it's just so important to have a solid foundation in terms of that regulatory framework, in terms of governance, right? Where I believe governments will play a key role, and then an assurance framework, because that's the foundation to all of that. So yeah, it's I think it's complex, but it's here to stay. So we just need to handle it.
Thank you. I absolutely agree. And I think I'd like to add that looking at the times we're in, industry needs to act. You need proper regulation, you need proper enforcement, but industry really need to operate proactively here, because just even in the last few months, it was discovered that one of the combatants in the conflict in the Gulf, Iran, have a particularly maritime-directed cyber program, looking to harvest credentials and find ways of getting into maritime operations. And they are not the only ones. And I think great work on the part of the governments and stuff like that, but we need to act in industry, and it's being done. And we should cooperate even more on this.
Nico, can you switch it off for a sec? Let me just ask a question. I'll... Okay, great. Nico, I was going to come to you in general because you are operating the vessels. One of the comments I was going to make, and I know it's just it's a minor point. Let's take drones. I was at a Posidonia event on Friday, and it was a class society. They were going to use drones as part of the celebration, and I heard that the drones had an issue because one of the yachts parked just outside the hotel had anti-drone technology on, and it would automatically take out the drones. And the skipper of the yacht didn't want to switch it off because he was protecting his employer. Now, that may or may not be the case. The point I'm trying to make is that we have new tech now, new risks, which need a lot less money. It's not a matter of being hit by a ballistic missile any longer. A lot smaller craft can cause a lot of damage. So how can you engage with your crew and to convince them that there is ways forward, that they can be protected, they can remain safe in doing their everyday job, carrying bulk cargoes of no military significance other than they are feeding or nurturing an economy at the importing and on the exporting side? So your general comments regarding how things are developing. Thank you.
I think before we tackle that, there's one general comment. Technology is going ahead at a very fast pace, and anything made by a human brain is an antidote. It's always going to be vulnerable, whether we like it or not. So the more we advance technology on data transfer on board ships and information going backwards and forwards, is going to become more and more and more vulnerable to attacks. So what we have to do, it is difficult, but I suppose that's the only solution, is to train the people on board the vessel to read through the lines, to make sure they use the data properly, to become aware of the circumstances where they can be targets, because ships today are weaponized, to make sure they try to avoid loopholes and fake news, and communicate. I think that's the best source of action. Talk to them and make sure they follow certain circumstances, because we're going to enter a world where things are going to become much more vulnerable.
For those of you who have started walking around the exhibition, I'm sure that you'll be hearing the buzzword for this year, which is AI. A few years ago, it was big data. Now AI is here to take over the breathing space. Maria, I'll come to you as an expert. How do you see AI actually influencing maritime operations? What are the pros? What are the potential threats? Any comments?
Yes. Indeed, AI is already emerging or even used in certain cases in operations and supporting shipping companies and more entities in the maritime community. We recently had the MAS code, which is a manifestation to what extent AI is endorsed and used and will be unfolding further in the sector. So yes, digitalization now is moving in terms of AI technology. And this brings a qualitative difference in the cybersecurity and the threats landscape as well. So we have AI-enhanced threats. So recently we've seen there were documented and reported AI-assisted spoofing attacks. We have new forms and new taxonomies of threats like polymorphic malware or spear phishing, which constitute new components of previous known attacks like ransomware and so on and so forth. So it's changing. But, also it's not only the attack or the malicious side, which is changing. And of course, the most prominent new threat, a new type of threats and concerns actually regarding that is the so-called adversarial AI. The new issues arising by vulnerabilities in AI-assisted systems like navigation or collision avoidance. But we do already know these types of threats like data poisoning or model evasion and so on and so forth. And again, the frameworks like the developing mass code, which will take some time on, but even the IAC's requirements do recognize this evolving threat space, although they don't refer exactly to next-gen systems. They are born and developed for conventional digital systems and digital measures and practices. They already do refer to cybersecurity best practices. So I do insist to see the bright side of this, but we do have technological developments for the protection side already. We do have more adaptive intrusion detective IDS systems, AI assisted obviously. We do have AI techniques for zero trust architectures. We do have new security information and event management systems that do implement AI-based analytics. So it's evolving as well, but it's a very rough equilibrium. It's really challenging, but there is this very vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem as well. So all these companies that do produce, develop systems, especially for these new threats.
Thank you. And I was going to ask a question of, I know we talk about AI as being a risk, but also we should see it as one of our tools to improve security. So any comments from somebody with a good story to tell?
Not so much on the security, but remember, I think AI is a complementary tool. It's basically used to advance and give us more information. It's not a decision-making tool. I'll give you a very simple example. Back in 1948, the radar was introduced to commercial shipping, was a product of the UK Royal Navy. And the radar over the years was developed and became the ACTIS. It's a wonderful tool which shows at any given moment, position, location, etc., etc. But the decision where you advance and how you take course is still on the human person riding it. So yes, a wonderful tool to assist you to understand the circumstance and environment around you, but not to take away the human brain. That's my humble opinion.
Sorry.
Thank you. Also some comments regarding cybersecurity in general. I don't remember. Maybe somebody remembers a movie that came out in 1997. It was called Speed 2. Sandra Bullock, she was on board a cruise ship. Yeah, she was on board with the guy she met in Speed 1 that was on board a bus. The point is that in this movie, some terrorists came on board. They managed to hack into computers, to the engines, to the steering systems, and put the ship towards a tanker. In 1997, this was science fiction, I think. Now, this is one of the worst case scenarios that, of course, we have to be aware of and deal with when it comes to risks within cybersecurity. But we must also, you asked something positive about it. And of course, why do we do this? Why do we talk about AI? Why do we talk about digitalizing ships? Because we think it is a positive thing. When it comes to safety, when it comes to crew welfare, when it comes to security, when it also comes to environmental questions, it is a positive thing. But with everything, there are always some risks. And we, of course, have to be aware of the risks, and we have to handle the risks. And I think that as for now, when it comes to regulations, the requirement of a safe cybersecurity management system is, in my opinion, one of the best regulations and requirements that we have, because it requires the ship owners, it requires the seafarers, it requires a systems where the risks has to be identified and the risks has to be dealt with, based on how you operate and what kind of systems that you have. So I think this is a really good thing, but of course we have to, as flag states, build competence on cybersecurity. Ship owners has to build competence because we have to get better. We are not good enough now, but I think that is maybe the best tool. But also inside the IMO, we are working with cybersecurity when it comes to the Mars code, autonomous ships. We are working with guidance regarding cybersecurity, and there is also ongoing work when it comes to a strategy. So, of course, there has to be done a lot more, but we must not forget that the reason why we're doing this is because we think it is something good for the future of shipping. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've identified all these risks, security risks, but we talked also about sustainability. And at the end of the story, at the end of the game, we talk about financial sustainability. So we're expecting owners, operators to take on board and find pathways forward, be it the energy, decarbonization, security, cyber, etc. But Agile, you're at the sharp end. And you have to make sure that your company remains financially sustainable, or else you might as well pack it in. How do you see the world evolving in that space? Do you think we're paying enough attention? And I appreciate the markets are really hot at the moment, and lots of people making big money. But on the end of the day, you've got to renew your fleet eventually. You'll have to await the inevitable drop in the market. Do we take into account all these increased costs coming ahead?
Are you making this question because we are the Norwegian green bond recently raised company?
You know what the market is.
Yeah. Whatever was described over this panel from everyone regarding regulation, the pressure, the geopolitical changes, the security, etc., etc. As I said before, it's adding to the costs. And there is one element that we used to be running vessels reactively. We were adjusting to whatever we were facing. Now, the list, especially what was mentioned from the regulatory point of view, not only for the security, but also for the sustainability, even environmental sustainability that we're trying to build, it only creates lists and lists of extra things that needs to be done. We need to train everyone at shore and on board the vessels that they need to be to stop being reactive. Well, not stop, but adjust and build some sort of resilience. Because in order to keep shipping being the risk carriers, we need to make sure that this extra cost, the additional worries, for example, it will probably become a structural cost. And with a good charter party clause that will adjust and pass on whatever the ship manager or the actual ship is carrying as a cost and as a risk is translated to the financial part that the ship owner shouldn't take the burden of. So building this whole resilience model around the operational flexibility, the fast adjustment that must come with guidelines, not necessarily with regulations, but guidelines, because the commercial element, it is the one that will bring the actual need. So if you need to have a vessel at the end of the day passing the Strait of Hormuz, think 2 years from now, where whatever is happening now probably will remain there as a threat. And everybody would be asking us to pay for that threat. or the end user, as I said before. So this needs to become part of the structure. So companies like us, when we explain to our Norwegian investors why the OPEX is high, it has that element built in. And that means that the charterer who takes on this vessel understands that in order to survive and be sustainable for the future, has this element of the OPEX in.
Yes. If I can add something on what Angelo said, of course I agree fully. Structurally, what we're seeing today will have an effect for the longer term. You mentioned the Straits of Hormuz. The mere fact that there is one country in the world that can choke the world from oil, even if the oil and the consistency in the flow is re-established and we get back to normal, the countries that have switched away from oil for energy production to coal will not go back to oil. So we're going to see structural change in commodities as a result of these disruptions. Remember this; it's all part of the game. Coal, the black sheep of the dry bulk industry, is now the savior of many countries in Southeast Asia for energy production. But when the oil flow again at some point is normalized, not all of them will switch back because geographically they will feel threatened.
Lynn, you heard from the Greek shipowning community. Does the Norwegian shipowning community have anything to add or oppose?
No, when it comes to sort of the green transition, we have, of course, some differences, but I think that's part of being a community. Sometimes we agree on things and sometimes we disagree. But I just wanted to pick back a bit upon the human element, which we discussed before, because that's one of the things at the forefront of at least my members' mind right now. And of course, the Greek is the ship owners. And we're here to discuss the quality flag. And I think for us, having a flag is also having a trusted partner. And one of the important parts of a flag support for our members that we've seen throughout the years, particularly from the Norwegian flag, but from other flags as well, is the crisis management part of it, which we haven't touched that much upon today. But for instance, during COVID, I think our association had weekly meetings between the Maritime Authority, the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to resolve operational challenges and be able to change crew on Norwegian ships all around the world for about 2 years. And that goes back to what we're seeing right now in the Strait of Hormuz is we have regular meetings. And I think having a flag state that you can have as a trusted partner in the kind of world that we're seeing right now, if it's cyber threats or security threats or other things, is something that is very valuable for us, and that's also why it's important for us to be here today.
Thank you, and I see that Manoli was nodding his head. Before he answers, though, I'd like to add that our national decision-making enough. We saw it during COVID, where irrespective of what the nations wanted, the flag states wanted, the international regime did not really incorporate key worker status as far as crew changes, reliefs, etc. So everybody agreed on something, but nothing actually happened. And I'm concerned that if we had a similar situation next year, exactly the same would repeat. It doesn't seem to have sunk in. But Manoli, over to you.
Okay, I will try not to be too radical, but I'm listening very carefully. It's very interesting, actually. Totally agree. Let's learn from our lessons. The multiple crises that we have faced the recent years were very educational, but at the same time, let's not forget that not about our relations, but generally, we should trust our roots. Because when things get hard and tough, we can see about the critical role of the alliances and how they work. It's not the regulations that saves us. It's the commitment to strong alliances and strong partnerships. I serve in the ministry the last 7 years. It is a long period for a guy like me within the ministry. And we have seen these 7 years of experience, multiple crises, and even the recent one, we saw that regulations other than IMO and our global dialogue is not able to give solutions, but only the power of our flags, our reputation, and the quality of our intervention. I'm very clear on that. And when we speak about security and all these issues, I'm listening very carefully. But since we are in the era of the autonomous shipping, very nice. We have very many nice things to celebrate under the IMO, the first and very important approach. It's very good. But at this time, I'm not very sure that we're discussing about the Greek power and our power in the maritime. Autonomous shipping and everything related to secure the autonomous character of our vessels, we have a long way to make till then. It's not AI the threat. AI or technology in these matters can serve and secure in the world, but we need seafarers and we need companies that they can take decisions on other levels. So let's be realistic on that. But I can say that the problem is that all these threats that we can face other internal issues, or suddenly when you find drones in your maritime domain that you don't know how they came, so they can affect your ferries or other stuff. Who is being affected and the impacts? And let's listen to our maritime communities, because the impacts of all those threats, and you said many times that how someone is going to pay for that. So we have to make sure that our regulations are not more strict than the market is, because it's very easy, of course, for the ship owners and everybody to transfer this cost to our societies, and we have to remain a little bit competitive, as the Deputy Minister says. And it's not just about the ship owners, that they know their job, they know how to invest, but we're asking too many from them now that they need to invest. You know, some billions are being invested in our vessels now, right? Unfortunately, not in European shipyards, I must say. But at the same time, those ships are not built for this future. It's built for the current status, if I may say. So we have to keep in mind how to remain competitive in this world, not in the next 40 years that we have to make also other kinds of threats that maybe we're not aware of. So let's keep in mind, and sorry that I was a little bit strict in that, but this is the way that recent history, but also the current discussions should be in place. That's why we have to regulate, we have to invest in the evolution, but in a way and with a pace that makes sense for the societies and the human element, because we still have seafarers, but they are by far away from what we discussed today. So we have to speak about those skills that they should have, and this is something that we can invest now for the future. So keep in mind about the human element.
Thanks, Manuel. And of course, this, I wouldn't call a conference, this meet event here has very little time to discuss everything. I would just point out that historically, a flag was there to defend you both diplomatically and militarily. And of course, we know that the EU nav force, let's say, down in the Red Sea, has two ships actually sailing at the moment, trying to cover this vast area. And then we have complaints that the ships aren't there to protect the commercial shipping. So assets have to be provided, but that means that the taxpayer has to pay, and decision making has to come in. I think that Panagiotis is making the sign that I'm fired again, like always. So apologies for everybody else that wanted to contribute. I thought it was a really interesting discussion. Thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitris. On behalf of the organisers, I would like to thank once more all members of the panel for the thoughts and opinions they expressed on a vital and, quite frankly, as relevant as it gets subject. Before we end the proceedings, we will have the honour of inviting Mr. Even Sagebakk, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries of the Kingdom of Norway, to have some cleaning the rest. But there is always a but. I would like to, before I welcome him to the stage, we have a surprise for him. And with that surprise, I would like to invite Dr. Elias Bisias, founder of Visalos.net and Assistant Professor of the Department of Shipping, Trade and Transport of the University of the Aegean, to present a gift to the State Secretary.
State Secretary, a small gift from us to you. This symbolizes Poseidon. It's just one out of 200 small statues created by the Posidonia exhibition. And it actually symbolizes that even traditional values, traditional symbols need a contemporary touch. This is from us to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I would put it here. And it's not an easy thing to have a small summary of this dialogue, but first of all, I want to mention one thing. Even though we have fog today, it doesn't mean we have fog tomorrow. And I think one of the most important things, though we have AI, digitalization and everything, we need the people. And one thing what we think is very important in Norway is that we need to recruit broader. We need more women within the maritime sector. And I think this panel here is a good example, a good start on that aim. And then again, as you mentioned, there are a lot of things happening at the same time. And when a lot of things happening, big things happening at the same time, it tends to tangle a little bit. But then again, which industry is better to untangle or not than the maritime sector? And I think that is quite an important perspective to take with us further on. And also in Norway, we have this saying that's also said that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And what I think is, by hearing this discussion here today, I think the main key here is responsibility. It's about responsibility. It's about responsibility for the seafarers who carry trade on their shoulders, often in conditions none of us in this room would accept for ourselves. My grandfather, for example, he sailed the Second World War between the States and Europe. My father had several trips into by the Hormuz Strait in the 80s. Talked a lot with him about his experience there. And things have happened, and they will happen. And then again, we have responsibility for maintaining the standards on safety, on cyber resilience, on labor, that distinguish quality shipping from the grey zones, eroding the system from within, also mentioned here today, and responsibility for the frameworks, national and international, that keep freedom of navigation more than a principle on paper. And then again, strong alliance. And that's my last point here. What strikes me most with this dialogue is that Norway and Greece do not need to convince each other of these things. You more have been confirmed that we are on the same page here and that we need to work with the same cause. What we need, and what today has begun to build, is the habit of structured conversations so that shared values translate into coordinated response when the next crisis comes. And the sea, as you know, does not wait for perfect conditions, and neither should we. And before I thank you all for joining this session, I also have some gifts. And we have a little discrimination here by color. So we can start with the guests. Thank you all for both the panelists and everybody here in the room. Thank you.